Oh, I'm going to love to do this one. I'm going to love to bring this one. So, you should trust the Masons because it's in the Bible. I know, shocking, but I'm going to read it. And what I'm talking about is the Freemasons, the Stonemasons. Yep, it's in the Book of Kings of all places. So it's really short here. This was the year. The year is year 7. King Jehoash said to the priests, all the money of the holy things that is brought into the house of the Lord, the money for which each man is assessed, the money from the assessment of persons, and the money that a man's heart prompts him to bring into the house of the Lord, let the priests take each from his donor, and let them repair the house wherever any need of repairs is discovered. But by the 23rd year of King Jehoash, the priests had made no repairs on the house. Therefore, King Jehoash summoned the high priest and the other priests and said to them, why are you not repairing the house? Now therefore, take no more money from your donors, but hand it over for the repairs of the house. So the priests agreed that they should take no more money from the people and that they should not repair the house. Then the high priest took a chest and bored a hole in the lid of it and set it beside the altar on the right side as one entered the house of the Lord. And the priests who guarded the threshold put in it all the money that was brought into the house of the Lord. And whenever they saw that there was much money in the chest, the king's secretary and the high priest came and bagged and counted the money that was found in the house of the Lord. Then they would give the money that was weighed out into the hands of the workmen who had the oversight over the house of the Lord. The workmen had the oversight over the house of the Lord. And they paid it out to the carpenters, the builders who worked on the house of the Lord, and to the masons and to the stone cutters, as well as to buy timber and quarried stone for making repairs on the house of the Lord, and for any outlay for the repairs of the house. But there were not made for the house of the Lord basins of silver, snuffers, bowls, trumpets, or any vessels of gold or of silver from the money that was brought into the house of the Lord. For that was given to the workmen who were repairing the house of the Lord with it. And they did not ask for an accounting from the men into whose hands they delivered the money to pay out to the workmen, for they dealt honestly. The money, however, from the guilt offerings and the money from the sin offerings was not brought into the house of the Lord. It belonged to the priests. So the priests weren't doing what they were supposed to, hoarding the money, couldn't be trusted. And who did God trust? Which explains why Jesus went to the people he did, which was the workers. But especially in this case, it was the stone masons. It was the masons. Again, that is who was honest. So honest, they didn't even have to do an accounting of the money. That's how much they were to be trusted. And they paid it out to the carpenters and the builders who worked on the house of the Lord, and to the masons and to the stone cutters, as well as to buy timber and quarried stone for making repairs on the house of the Lord, and for any outlay for the repairs of the house. So they were in charge of keeping the house of the Lord. So then when the Masons come here, because many of our founders were Masons, and they write our Constitution with the help of the hand of God, then can you not recognize how that's very significant here? Because God trusted the Masons in Kings. I mean, trusted them so much the money didn't even have to be there. Knew they were honest. So if God wanted you to recognize that the founders I sent to your country, that I helped write the Constitution for you, for the kind of land I wanted free people to live in, do you think maybe you can line up that you should trust the Masons? Yes. Yes, which also makes sense for why after Jesus left, after the resurrection, after he left, that it went on to Scotland. And I said not too long ago that Scotland ended up being the chosen people after the resurrection, because that's Scotland's history is, goes back. I know I said I'd do a video about the Picts. I just haven't gotten around to it. But Scotland in general, what the Picts can do with stone is amazing. Going way, way, way back. But that's what Scotland's, that's what their history is. The castles that they can build. They are the cornerstone. The cornerstone is talked about in the Bible too. So if God wanted you to recognize all these things and then recognize who's been attacking the Freemasons, Catholic Church, their entire history, for a reason, because they know that the Freemasons are the gatekeepers. Because in Kings, they were the gatekeepers. It wasn't the priests that they trusted. They couldn't be trusted, the priests. But the Masons could be. So I mentioned before that whatever the Masons became, I don't know what they are now. I don't know if there's not been a smear campaign against them, period. But your Freemasons came from the Knights Templar. Now all the different Knights of Malta, all this other crap, whatever it became once it was under the Catholic Church, you just have to, who knows what god-awful mess it is, because that's when the false church started taking over everywhere. But what Knights Templar was, they were the most noblest of knights, and the most noblest of knights back in the Middle Ages or medieval days. They were in charge of finding the Holy Grail. And I mentioned, I believe, that the Holy Grail has been found and that it resides at Dunvegan Castle, which is the MacLeod Castle. Because they have this cup but they don't really, they have all these different stories about how they acquired it. But they don't say that. That's just my opinion. But the Knights Templar were in charge of finding the Holy Grail. I just think they did, and they just didn't want to tell anybody. Because if you saw the Catholic Church running around taking over everything, you maybe not want to let that in. That part's just my opinion. They did find, however, like the spear that when they speared Jesus on the side, they did find parts of that, the Knights Templar. So the Knights Templar, the Freemasons were ancestors to the original Knights Templar. So then when Masons go all the way back to George Washington, okay, and wrote your Constitution, something that could never have been written by wicked men, because it's like the most beautiful document ever, most especially the Declaration of Independence. It's right up there with Scripture. Then what you should see is that Jesus, especially given that the most honest people were Masons in the Bible, didn't trust the priests, but trusted the Masons, then you should recognize it's the same story. There's a reason that the Catholic Church has continually attacked the Masons. Even when the Masons have tried to make peace with them, they just won't accept them. Because the Catholic Church knows that it's false. And Masons do too. It's just the Masons aren't the type that's going to run around and say it. Because they don't serve a denomination, but what they do serve, their initial role when they were the first Freemasons that came from the Knights Templar was to be the gatekeepers to protect true Christianity. True Christianity. That's what their goal was. So that when the Masons that came here, Jesus was always in the forefront of their mind with things they did. It's all over their writings. When you read any George Washington, any of the founders, was about Jesus. They used the word enlightenment, yes, but that shouldn't be an automatic like that. It means something bad, because they wrote all the time about Jesus in their letters. That's what the word they used. So that's the Masons' role, was to be the gatekeepers of the real Christianity. Just remember that, because, well, that's just too many coincidences. And given that the Scots, yeah, they have these things, these castles, going all the way back in their history, well, then it makes sense that all of that stuff came from the medieval days in Scotland. And those people, the Scots, came here, and some of them being Masons, and wrote the most beautiful Declaration of Independence ever.